said I wanted to be a doctor. And that came about because my little job, about 7, 8 years old, I told you, yeah, my life changed when my mother's life changed. And so I always applaud the families that can stay together as much as they can, and the fathers that hang in there, because you're not just leaving the mother, you're leaving your children too, and so many times that's what happens. So my life changed. So now my role changed. And my mother, when my dad left, she didn't have a car. And so she had to, she found this job at DJ Healy Home for Boys. Interestingly enough, she went to work with boys. It was a detention home. And she would have to walk and then catch 2 buses, walk to the bus stop and then catch 2 buses. And she'd leave in the dark because she had to be at work at like 6:30, 7 in the morning, which meant she left money on the table. I remember so clearly. I was either $2.50 or 3 single-dollar bills. And she would call the green cab company, and they would be in front of our door at 7:30 every morning. I had to get myself up, my brother up, lock up the house. 7 years old, 8 years old, and get in the car. And, there are no cell phones, so my mother just praying that, who's taking us from our house is really taking us to school. And then in the afternoon, of course, we would walk back home. And I'd have to heat up our food because she had gotten up early that morning and cooked it. We had no microwaves, right? And so, we had gas stoves. So turn it on that flame, and man, that's why I look at our kids today, and I'm just like, you can't do what? You're not gonna do what? I come from a rich family history and a cohesive family, but it wasn't necessarily that we were wealthy or had money. We had a lot of love. We had a lot of respect. Our grandparents, our great-grandparents were a very strong part of our lives. And so we just, knew that failure wasn't an option, but it didn't mean we weren't going to have struggles. It didn't mean that we weren't going to hit it all. And my mother had no sympathy for the quitter, right? And so none. I remember even going to college, and your little financial aid ain't come through, and they threatening to, cancel your classes, and I'd call home, and I'm all frantic. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have my money. And she'd hang up. You call back. Oh, Mama, I'm trying to tell you something. She'd hang up. And then you call back, and you're like, Ma. And she said, you all right? You calm? We can talk? I said, yeah. Oh, okay. So what's going on? She would tell you, emotion kills logic. I ain't talking to you in that frantic space. I need your whole head. And so, it was at that point that we would think strategy and how we would get it through. I remember her sitting us down when I was about 10 years old. I was in the 5th grade, and my brother was in the 6th grade. And she said, listen, if our lives are going to be any different, I've got to go back to school. Before she and my father married, her plan was to go to nursing school. But she got married May 26th. My brother was born September 13th. Do the math. And so, life changed, right? And so my dad went to work. He was in engineering school up at Central State, and they were in love, and they figured they could make it, and they first got married. My brother was first born, lived with my great-grandparents, and then we lived on Bloom in this little flat above. I can't remember the names right now, but they were our landlords. And my dad worked the night shift. He was at Ford Motor Company going through the engineering apprentice program. And I would wait till he came. That door would open. So in Detroit, in Michigan, the production line for the auto company, it never ends. It never stops. So you have shifts, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., 3 p.m. to 11, 11 to 7. And so when my dad, and it was always, the plus was to get the day shift, right? So you can go early, but you get home. And so I remember when my dad finally got the 3 to 11 shift, and he'd come in at 11 o'clock at night, and I would get out of the bed. I was a little big, and my mom was food, and she'd either get up and heat it up or whatnot. And they would play cartoons. at night at that time. And so Warner Brothers cartoons. And so we would, I'd get up with my dad and he'd be eating and I'd watch the cartoons. And when I tell you, Warner Brothers got some racist cartoons that they used to play at that time. I remember one when Daffy Duck was the slave, Gethsemane Sam, you know, he had the gun, he was the overseer. This is a cartoon. Bugs Bunny was Abe Lincoln, because I remember he came in with his, you know, freeing the slaves, and Daffy Duck was, yes, oh my God, this was on television, just like it was nothing. And this would be at the late show, because TV went off at that time. And I'm looking at who's on here. I don't know if any of y'all remember when they would actually say, it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? And then they'd say the late show and the late show. And then TV would go off. Everybody in the country, nobody was watching TV. And so when I was a little girl, and that's how I think I got hooked on cartoons. And to this day, I love cartoons, you know, but I ain't never gonna forget those. They were pretty rough. They were pretty rough. But I was telling you that the line never stopped moving, and so in Detroit, the line person could have a really good living because your first 40 hours was straight, you know, straight 40-hour time, straight time. Anything over that was time and a half. Saturday was double time. Sundays and holidays was triple time. And so we lived in communities where people were homeowners, whether you were blue collar or white collar. We lived in communities where people owned their own home. And when you owned your own home, that meant you took care of your lawn. And you better not step on their lawn. You better not. I had some Mr. Washington, he wasn't no joke. Get out my driveway. Don't turn your bicycle around my yard. None of that stuff. So I was telling you the story, and this is how I talk. So I'm storytelling, right? So I go back and forth. I hope, are y'all keeping up? Is everybody keeping up? And so, and I see my aunt on there. And so I got some stories that are going to include you too. And so, because she knows everything I'm saying is true. And so anyway, as we navigated through here, so when I was little, and my chicken, it was the neck, the gizzard, the heart, the liver, and it would all be wrapped up and contained inside the cavity of this carcass of chicken. And so I said, I'm going to be an obstetrician. I say that. I said, I want to be a doctor that delivers babies. And my mother was a gynecologist, an obstetrician. And I said, okay, that's what I'm going to be. And from that point forward, that's where I would spend my free time. We didn't have a lot of time to just do nothing. You know, there was always something planned. Our summers were often in New York City with my grandmother, who lived at 107 East 10th Street. She was in apartment 4C, I think, and her sister Margaret was in 3D. And it was different. You know, New York kids are different. You know, my grandmother would open the door and just be like, go. And we'd be all over the city, all up and down. You know, I'm down in the East Village, and we'd be all up 50. I know we'd run from Central Park, and then we'd get back before the street lights went out. And I remember at that time, they didn't curb their dogs very well, and I'd step in every day, and my grandma would be cleaning my shoes and say, where have you been? We said, nowhere. What did you do? Nothing. You know, and so that was the kind of thing. I had an Aunt Odessa that was up, and Tracy, you have to remind me, but I think she was at like 142nd in Lenox or something. She was up that way in engagement. And my grandmother was from, my maternal grandmother was from Jellico, Tennessee. And I remember the summer we went down there, and so different. Red dirt. Our day was get up, take a radio flyer. This was crazy. Take a radio flyer wagon and take it to the top of a hill. You ain't got no brakes. You don't have no control. And you almost going 90 vertical, and you coming down that hill. I remember the day I stopped doing it, I flipped over and skinned all my butt and everything. It was terrible. And imagine, now this is in the 70s, but they didn't have a tub. And so you would take a bath. My Aunt Elizabeth would pull this big old tub out, and we would get in it. And I learned very quickly, I want to be the first one in. And so when they would call us to come in and take, I was like, I'm in, because I'm getting in the tub first. But they didn't change the water. So, you know, it was that kind of a life. It was a great life growing up.
Excuse me, may I
You
ask a
know,
question, please?
now mind, yes, please.
Um, I love your story, honestly. My name is Tajon Davis. I go by Tank. The question that I wanted to ask was, um, when you were growing up, seeing that the grind that your mom was going through, and not necessarily the struggle that you guys were going through, but what made you want to be what you were today? Like, was seeing
So,
her
yeah.
struggle, and like, did you want to grow up and make a better life, not only for yourself but for her and for your family and just things like that?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking it. So I started telling you how she sat me down and my brother down. I was about 10 years old. And she said, if our lives are ever going to be different, I've got to go back to school. And with that, she went first to community college and achieved her associate's degree. And from then, she went on to Wayne State University and achieved, and got her bachelor's. And after that, she kept going straight through and went to Marygrove and got a master's degree in education. And as a result of that, our lives indeed did change. Now, here's the thing. Coming up, we always knew we were going to college. It was never an option. The only option was, where would you go? Because my brother and I, when we finished, we were about fourth generation college graduates. So that meant my great grandmother had a sibling that finished at Spelman. My grandparents both had master's degree, my father's parents, which was unusual in many ways at that time. And then, of course, my mother. And when my mother went back to school, her father, at 71 years old, went back to college. But at any rate, so we always knew we were going to do that. I thought I would be a doctor, and that was my desire from 7 years old on. And so she would make that, make things happen for me that would support that decision. But when I got into the 10th grade, a black man, a brother by the name of Kenneth Hill, he worked at Ford Motor Company. He had started a program called Detroit Area Pre-College Engineering. And he had decided that my school, Renaissance High School, a college preparatory high school, would be the school he would launch this in. So 15 kids had an opportunity to work side by side with engineers at the big three auto companies, and we could spend our summers at Michigan State or University of Michigan doing a summer program around this discipline. And at that point, I said, well, I want to do engineering, especially when I learned I could do engineering as an undergraduate and then do my, still go to medical school. That was my vision at that time. But I always made the connection, if you will, baby, between education and, or some type of a skill and quality of life. Because remember, one of the things I said is that growing up in Detroit, the auto workers, the line never stopped moving. And so those blue collar workers that were there were able not only to make a living, but they could also get training in the apprenticeship. And so you could come out of there in skilled trades with a journeyman's card that takes you all over the world to work. And your pay was also, a lot different by comparison. But yes, absolutely. So in terms of my mother, absolutely. I knew that she depended on me greatly. But more than anything, failure not being an option, supporting her vision and dream for my life was just as important for me as developing my own dream for my own life. Because even in that space, and I worked in corporate and made crazy money and had wonderful titles and a staff and everything. I walked away. And I walked away because in the engineering fields, while I needed more young people that looked like you and looked like me, I couldn't get them. So I figured they weren't coming in, they weren't interviewing, I couldn't hire them fast enough. So I said, let me go get them. And that's when I left corporate, walked away, and went and started the Jellico Foundation. And my mother was probably my biggest supporting fan, because let me tell you, my brother is a physician. He, that was the thing we were both gonna do. When I walked away, he just couldn't understand that. My dad couldn't understand. You just gonna leave your job and you go, because trust me, when you're in that entrepreneurial space, some days are like this, it's feast, and some days get to be famine. But my mother, who always just my greatest champion, my greatest fan, and she was like, "You can get through this. This victory is on the other side of through. Just get through." And that is the truth. One of my dearest friends, Tim Howard, always says there's no test without the testimony. There's no testimony without the test. So, when you find yourself in a situation where it seems like it's tough, the dream you want to try and achieve seems like it's somewhat out of reach because of, constraints that you don't appear in that moment to be able to remove, you can't give up. You don't have an option to quit. You got to identify people who are willing to help you and to circumvent your circumstances for you, run interference for you so that you can get through, because your victory is on the other side of through. And that's just it. It hurts and breaks my heart when I see our young people, just give up at times, and I don't want you to ever do that. I had a stepdaughter that I lost to suicide, 24 years old, Lori Joe. And they tell me when Lori, because I couldn't understand it. I was like, well, why? What was going on that would make her? She had just finished college, her and her little buddies at that time, Kendrick Lamar and Absol, we called them her. They were all doing their little thing together. And I thought, okay, that little, their little music is going to get off. Now we know what Kendrick Lamar is, right? And so when Lori took her life, she was 24 and she was beautiful. And I remember one of my other stepchildren said, well, she just wasn't happy. Everything I saw on the outside looked just the opposite. But I remember thinking in my brokenhearted state that, I'm so angry about it, because this is what I want you to understand. At 24 years old, you ain't lost a house to a bad mortgage or a foreclosure. You probably ain't had a car repossessed. Your credit may not be the best, but it ain't been the worst. You ain't been through enough to say I quit and give up. You just keep going. You come from a history and a people that are not only survivors. My aunt reminded me, Tracy, of this the other day. My mother used to say, we are overcomers. We don't just survive, we overcome. And that's what you are. Yeah, so it was very important for me to be successful in these spaces for my mom, and even more so for me and the generations that come after me. But that's a great question. I love it. Anybody else got questions? I like that, because, I'll just keep talking until you know.
If nobody else does have a question, another question that I wanted to ask is, if there was a young lady or male that was struggling that you've encountered with, like if you've seen them struggle, what way would you motivate them? Like, would you explain your grit and how your motivation from your mom got you to where you could be and just relate your life, trying to relate your life to theirs to better them in a way?
So, yeah. So, Dr. Davis, I actually come in contact with that all the time. In my story, it offers any inspiration. It is certainly one that I'm willing to lend. But more important to me is to get you to see your story. And it's yet to be, there's no period there. So you don't, you just have to keep going. We're not at the end of your story. And I need you to understand a couple of things. When I look at you, if I focus on your faults, all I'll see are your faults. But if I focus on your fabulous, all I'll see is your fabulous. And the same thing you must have true for yourself. When you look in that mirror and you say, I'm this old, or I've reached this age and I still don't have this, or I haven't accomplished that, or I still, that's not the time to beat up on yourself. You get, as my mother used to say, okay, you cry for a moment and then be done with it. It's time to go to the next level. So, because your tears, what she was saying to me is emotionally, sense of failure, feelings of depression, they're real. They're absolutely real. We can't focus on that. We can't leave and put our energy into that. We have no time for that. We have the luxury for that. We've got to use what we have as far as energy is concerned to redirect, reinvent, redefine who we are, how we're going to do this thing. And so when I come across young people and, they feel down on themselves, probably before I focus a lot on that which is discouraging them, I tend to pull from them those things that they can feel good about themselves and share with me, and then I highlight those as well. But the best thing I can do for anybody that's at a crossroads or at a point where they just don't feel like it's happening is to share with them that the greatest thing about being human is that faults are inevitable, weaknesses are unavoidable, but we're overcomers. We see it, we get through it. And for every one of us that's going through some hell and we think it's unbearable, I guarantee you there's somebody that would trade their hell for yours. And so it's never as bad as we think it is. I have a lot of faith. How are you with your faith? Are you a faith-based person? I'm talking to Dr. Davis. Pink, wasn't it you that asked me those questions? Who asked me that?
That was Tank.
I can't hear. Can you hear me? Phil, can you hear me?
Yeah, that was Tank. I can hear you.
Okay, so I didn't know.
Yeah.
That was Tank. So he's hiding from me now. But, okay.
He's on mute
now.
But
that's the main thing I want you all to know. There's a power, whomever you call him, by whatever name,
They kicked him out.
greater than ourselves. And so we gotta be willing to surrender ourselves to the reality. We only have so much bandwidth, right? So at some point we have to realize we can do all that we can do, and then we have to trust God, trust Yahweh, trust Jehovah, trust Allah to do the rest. And that's So where was I at? You were asking me about my journey. I'll continue unless somebody has something else and they can add it later. So I'm moving to this field of engineering, and I'm in mechanical engineering. I finished my undergraduate at Xavier University in New Orleans, and I finished in physics. And I went on Howard University. Both of these are historical psychology universities, all under the HBCU system. Best decision I could have ever made. I actually followed my brother to Xavier, because at first, he was at Xavier. I'll give you an example of my mother. When he was about in his senior year, going into senior year, we're sitting around the table, and my mother asked him, what's your plan? You getting ready to graduate from high school. What's your plan? And so then he goes, well, Well, I was thinking I would just hitchhike across country till I find myself. And I remember thinking, ooh, how does this come to that? And when I put my head down, I was like, yeah, I know this is coming, because she got real quiet. And then she lifted her head and she said, but boy, you ain't lost. And so with that, she was filling out his college applications and all of this. And I was like, Mama, why are you doing all of this? Why isn't he? She said, because he got to leave here and he can't never come back. The best thing your family gives you are roots and wings. And she gave us roots and she gave us wings. Roots where we were solid. We knew who we were as the people and family and who we were as African Americans and Africans in America. And wings so we could just soar, so we could fly. So she didn't mind. So she sent him 1,700 miles away. He first went to Morehouse that summer, then he went to Xavier University in Louisiana. They are responsible for putting the largest number of African Americans in medical school, and they finished in that space. And I, on the other hand, was thinking I was going to go east. And I was thinking of all of these other schools that would be considered predominantly white. My brother's like, girl, you need to come down here to New Orleans. This is the joint. You ain't never seen nothing like this. I didn't even know how far down New Orleans was. Didn't have enough sense to get a map and look at it. But I remember getting there, and I'm like, I am in the boot of the country, literally, because it's shaped like a boot. But it was the best experience of my life, and I met some of the most wonderful people, and we're friends to this day. And I finished in physics, and here was the thing. I was on this campus with Black folks and Black youth and Black people who were all about not me just getting into school, but getting me out of there too. So if I was not in class and I'm walking across the campus, my professors knew me by name, and they were not opposed to calling your mama and your daddy and saying they're not coming to class, they're not going to school. And so, you know, it was a community that had embraced us as those who were pursuing a college degree, and they got us through. And then from there, I did my graduate work at Howard University, and in the School of Engineering. And I remember I had lost my grandmother by this time, my paternal grandmother, Mama Janie. Why you laugh, Phil? You got a Mama Janie? I lost my Mama Janie to breast cancer. And as you see, is if you're hearing me, most of the things that I've done and the decisions that I've made around my journey have been tied to something or someone in my family who is close to me. And so in that space, she died of breast cancer, and I just couldn't understand how it is we're this leading country and all of these this research and things around cancer and oncology, but we could not cure this thing. And so as a result, I asked, and I think because of the HBCU, the hospital, Howard University has, you know, a medical school, a hospital, a law school, you know, we call it the Mecca because it's got it all. We call it the Mecca. And so the arrangement was made for this little Black girl who had this idea that we should be able to do research in cancer to try and help and save the patient, because what modalities that we use, it's not that we can't kill the cancer. You can kill the cancer. The problem is we kill the normal cells, which ultimately kills the host. And so I said, well, how come we can't kill the cancer and preserve the normal cells? And so then as a result, I was allowed to work with surgeons. They was all Black. They let me come in. They would donate their time, And we would be involved in this research where we actually used canines at that time, and we would do something called intraoperative hyperthermia, hyper is heat, earth, raise it, hyperthermia, intraoperative radiation therapy with electrons. And what it was like, here's your tumor, and we used this double node microwave antenna that we inserted, and it would shrink the malignant tumor, preserving all the normal cells around it. And the beauty of that research, now mind you, this is how life is. So my research, my thesis title was the dosimetry effects of double node microwave antenna and intraoperative hyperthermia and intraoperative radiation therapy with electrons. And my first day on the job, the white boy asked me if I was the new secretary. That's how life is sometimes in this circle. And of course, we don't fall apart and get angry. You say anything with a smile, as my mother said, you say anything with a smile. And I said, no,
You
I'm
said
not.
that was the name of your thesis?
But if you're getting coffee, I take mine with 2 creams and 2 sugars. You can bring it to me in that office over there. But of all the things he could have asked me, is in this organization that was full of engineers, being an engineer was not something he even fathomed. And as it turned out, he didn't even have an engineering background. But at any rate, you know, a couple of years ago, I was sitting with a sister, Danielle Schutz, and she was interviewing me, doing a video take, and we were talking about that research, and a woman came up to me who was in that audience, and she said, I'm alive today because of your research. I got the port right here in my chest where they use the IORT and the IOHT, and we just hugged. This is a white woman, and I was like, wow, this is really something. This is really something. So it's those little wins, you know, that make you know you were in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. Anybody have a question? Because I'll keep going. So from that point, my life really changed. So I'm in Washington D.C. This is Chocolate City, right? This place. If y'all born and raised here and you've never, that was my thesis. Yeah, that's my title. What, the dosimetry effects of the dosimetry effects of double node microwave. Why you laughing? Why are you laughing? Yes, that was my thesis. Yeah, my master's thesis. And that's what continue. I really should have probably went on and did a doctorate even at that time. But I got a call from my brother while I was, working, and my 5 years of working. You remember he called me and said, I always wonder if you would get in medical school. I said, anybody go to med school. I finished engineering. And so the bet was on, and I left engineering, United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and I entered medical school about 5 years after being on the professional job. And about 3 years in, a research team needed an engineer to calibrate a little biosensor, because at that time they was trying to determine if you had a stroke, what was the concentration of a particular amino acid being emitted from your brain, and how was it affecting you. And if they could harness it, then we could give meds to, like you do with a heart attack, early onset of a heart attack, you take an aspirin. We could probably do that with the stroke, if you will. And that's funny news. That brings me back around. Let me tell you how Black people are. This is what's so wonderful and the beauty of being Black. So when I entered the job, the United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission, I was at that time only the 3rd African-American female engineer that they had hired. And at that time, they had been in place over 40 years. The United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission it used to be called the Atomic Commission. And they were responsible for the build of Little Boy and Fat Man, the nuclear bombs that were dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima back in World War II. And so I was only, one of 3. And my responsibility was to go into the nuclear power plants, which were usually erected and built in very rural areas, many in the South. And when we would come on site, we would do what was called a unannounced inspection. And so I got on the USNRC, I got on the jacket with all of that in the back and the hard hat. You're not supposed to fraternize with folks that you come in to do these inspections with. But I remember my father telling me, he said, you got this master's degree in nuclear engineering. I said, yep. And he said, you might be one of the smartest book learned people when you hit that yard. at those power plants. I say, uh-huh. Maybe, I don't know. He said, but let me tell you something. You don't know shit. He said it'll be that high school student who graduated high school, who built that plant from the ground up, that blue collar worker that's been on that site for 30 years, that knows every valve and every screw and every pipe. That's who you have to align with. That's who's going to make you successful. And so I would enter those places with all humility. And usually it was me and all white guys. And I'm telling you, word and I don't care where you are. Black people get the word out there. And people was, it's this black girl it's this black girl here in the regulatory commission in this hat. And you're not supposed to fraternize. But I would be looking up on they'd be on the platforms, and they do like this. You know how we do. And I'd be like, I see you. And some of them be like this. And it would make you feel good because I'm in the bowels of Alabama, okay, or Mississippi. And it's like, oh, in Arkansas. And I'm like, they let me know, we got you. And I got sick, I remember one time being there, and I was like, don't take me to no hospital here. Something in my spirit said, if I go here, I come out of here. I need to get back to D.C. So back to D.C. It was a wonderful place. If you all have not ever been, you got to go. It was truly, it still is the chocolate city. It was this place almost magical. As you know, its history kind of reminds you of just one large Harlem, if you will, or Brooklyn even. But in Black people, and they were professionals, and the doctors, the lawyers, the lawmakers, the policymakers, as well as the shop owners, and it was just Black people everywhere. And they really, really inspired me in that space. I thought I would never live anywhere else. Never thought I would live anywhere else. So in that space, I'm still talking. If you got a question, you can ask me. Because I don't know how many young people are on the line, but I want you to think about leaving here. Travel was one of the things that my mother really, really emphasized with us. You got to leave here. Black people who leave this country see other Black people in other countries. Even if it's in scenarios that are more challenging than this, they don't have a minority mindset. They don't think with the glass half full. One of the beauties about being at Howard University was got one of the largest populations of international students. Many of my friends were from Africa. And they went back after finishing, and Modibo went on to become Prime Minister of Morocco, and Moses went on to become head of AT&T, in Joburg. Chaco stayed here, and he's from Cameroon, and he's just become this developing, he's just a monster at this point. But the one thing they always say is that we don't think of ourselves as minorities. Africans from Africa do not think of themselves as the minority. They would always say, African Americans, you call yourselves a minority, you act like it. So that's one of the things that we really do need a paradigm shift. We're the rising majority, but we definitely need to probably stop referring to ourselves as the minority. Because there's some misses in that title, and it keeps you in a position of submissiveness when you are using that title, even describing yourself. That's absolutely correct.
Yes, indeed.
Thought somebody had a question. So I don't know where we are in this. How much more time we got? Because I can keep going. I love this. The storytelling. This is
I was going to ask.
The role of the griot in our history is exactly what it is that we do. Many times when people see me and they think, oh my gosh, you have it all together. you know, you drive this, or you live here, or you dress like this, and you look like that. I need you all to know, not this, I was not kidding. Don't ever look like we're going through if what you're going through is not what you really want to look like. You understand me? So, you know, you did not, if you think about it, in the 60s, and during the civil rights movement, they were seldom found in, you know, in pictures not dressed, a tie, you know, women wearing their pearls, wearing their, you know, dresses, children dressed, because we didn't want to look poor. We didn't want to look like we were in a struggle. And we wanted to look like we were, one, overcomers. We were able and capable of not only being successful, but presenting ourselves successful. And you do feel differently. When we went to school, we didn't wear sneakers and stuff. We had school clothes. What? Mm-hmm. We had. Mm-hmm. I'm waiting. I'm here. You, Phil. You were gonna ask what? Phil. I thought I heard you say you were gonna ask. Oh, it's not coming through. So I'll keep talking about that then. Are you okay? So we don't dress that way anymore. When I was in school, when we were coming up, we wore school clothes. We wore sneakers only to go to gym class. We did not wear sneakers. You know, they were not a part of the dress. And there is a difference in the way, I think, even now, young students and just people, period, we feel different many times based on how we are presenting ourselves. You know, when you have on your suit, and I've seen you clean, when you got on your suit, you know, and you dress, Phil, you got a different air about you than when you're in your laid back spot with your cap on and your sneakers. And so there's somewhere in there we have broken down those protocols where everything is casual and everyone needs to, or we don't have the lines of decorum that say, you know, if you're going on a job interview, you dress like this. If you're going to church, you dress like that. If you are having a nice meal out, you dress like this. You know, this idea that everything is casual and everybody is casual for everything, it absolutely does, I believe, have some influence on how we at times present.
I agree.
And so when we are feeling bad, things ain't going right. I got a text today, one of my young men, my brother's keeper, young men. I sit on the executive governance board for My Brother's Keeper. I also, through the Jellico Foundation, throughout the year, mentor, and in the summer of success, I always take no less than 10 of these young men through the paid internship program. But I got a call today asking me about one of my young men, and you know, he's not working, and he's feeling defeated. This whole COVID-19, this isolation piece, you know, and it takes a toll at some point. And as a result, you know, we're worried about the mental health of our young men right now, and women too. But we're worried about, you know, how are they processing this? You know, that's when you got to get up. That's when you get up, you shower, put on your clothes. You can't even, don't know, that's okay. But dress up, you know, so that maybe that helps you look up. And then you stand up and you continue to push yourself through so that you get up and keep going. And you don't fall apart. You know, it might look like it's coming apart. A lot of times it's coming together. And so how do we help ourselves push through? I think my mother was very, very clear when she said, and very, very knowledgeable and wise when she said, don't ever look like what you're going through. You know, don't look like what you're going through.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Where are we in this?
All right. Can you hear me?
You got anybody want to ask any questions at this time or share some of their
Can you hear me right
stories? You know, attention is bi-directional. And I look forward to, you know, I learn from our young people as well. I hear some stories that are breaking my heart. I was on a call with the mayor and the team about a week ago, and two of the youth that, well, Phil, you know, you my Brother's Keeper alum as well. And so they were on there and they're saying that the young people are losing hope.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, well, why are we losing hope? You know, yes, this is in the moment. My daughter is supposed to graduate this year. She had all these plans. She had an idea of what it was to look like. You know, she envisioned what senior year was to look like. But life is life.
Yes,
You
indeed.
know, at any time, life will throw you a curve and say, hey, what we can't do is we cannot get confused between what is happening and a sign as if it's happening to us. Things will happen and things will continue to happen. And we just keep going. You know, here's the thing that we don't do well. And as young people, you got to understand, you think you got to have a lot of money. It ain't never been about how much you make. It's about how much you keep, okay? So learn to pay yourself first, which means save a dime. And then learn that delayed gratification has a greater reward. You know, if you can't pay cash for it right now, don't put it on a credit card. Save for it, plan for it, and then you acquire it. But in the meantime, you know, you can hear me? You can hear me? Okay. Oh, it's a gross delay because I asked that question 20 minutes ago. I asked that, and so I don't know what. So Tracy, yeah, I got some. You know what? Let me look in the. Yeah. So yes, how can your mother struggle? Okay, your mom. I'm looking at your questions. If you give them to me in the chat room. How many people did you help with your research? Is the question I have. Can you hear me, Tank? I got, how many people did you help? So I don't know how many I helped. I'm gonna assume if physicians use my modality to help people with cancer, it could be somewhere in the hundreds. And that is obviously a wonderful thing. I can tell you that I was very much I can tell you that I was very much pleased to learn that people are still being impacted by it. Someone wrote, Zoom is whack. Oh, that's my answer. And then somebody wrote, let's see, it's much better now. But here's a perfect example. This is a perfect example. We just keep going,
Perfect.
Right? We just keep going. We don't fall apart. It is what it is. So from this point, if you have any additional questions you want to ask me, if you have anybody that, or yourself, that you think I can support or help, please don't hesitate. You'll know how to reach me through Phil. Send whatever it is you need. But the beauty of the art of the storyteller and combining that with the idea that at the end of the day, you just keep going and you don't give in to what you look like. You know, depression is real. We all get sad, but we have to make a choice and choose happiness. You know, choose happiness. Choose how you're going to live your life. And don't be afraid to remove from your life anyone that would disrupt you otherwise.
Yes,
that
indeed.
is important. And so I'm looking at another question that came to me. So, yeah, I know. I can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Oh, you can hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, so that's perfect, man. Dang, Nelson. Now I'm welcome back into the conversation. Goodness. Whole time I've been trying to ask questions and everything. Yeah, there was a delay.
I can hear
The delay just caught up.
I can hear you.
I had dozens of questions.
All right, let's go. I can hear you fine.
All right, so at age 16, because I know we got some students on here that's 16. I know we got some that's 17, 18, and there's a young lady who we work with that's 26. All right, so at 16, what were you doing? what was you focused on? Was your motivation boys, getting a boyfriend, what was your mind frame at 16?
So my mother used to say to my 16-year-old that's out there, my mama would say, boys and books don't mix. So I had a boyfriend, but I wasn't allowed to have one. Chief Jones drove a Firebird. It was gold with a big bird on the front of the hood and glass P-tops. And he showed up at my house and was asking to see me. And my mother said, what you want to see us for? And then he said, well, I was going to give her, he said, I wanted to give her a watch and a gift. And my mother said, what makes you think we can't buy her a watch? And so I was just like, this ain't going well. And so needless to say, he broke off with me and started going with Tamara Anderson because she could go out and I couldn't.
All right.
So at 16, at 16, if I did, we did a lot of what we call group dating. And it kept us from getting caught up, because one-on-one at 16, the hormones are real, and you find yourself alone and you find yourself caught up and doing stuff that, could lead stuff you ain't prepared for one way or the other. And so I try to tell my young people, delay sex as much as you can, young men and young and ladies. And my dad, he would give me tools. And he'd say, well, if they tell you everybody is doing it, then say, and leave me the hell alone. Right. Somebody else is doing it, Yes. But at 16, boys were not the focus. I was a debutante. I was active in my church. I was active in my community. I had friends, like I said, on both sides of the street. On one community of friends, you go over there and the fence might be there selling stuff or whatever. And then this other one, you go over there, the physicians and whatever house. But it was a beautiful synergy that existed for me in that space. No, I was thinking about what comes next. Hung out with my girlfriends and we had guy friends and we were all driving, but we would hang out in a group. And so we would go bowling or we would go roller skating was big, and so we would do that kind of a thing. And then you said, what was the other question?
Looking at 16, 17, and 18.
So when I was 17.
So even looking at specifically for the 17 and 18-year-olds, do you have any young men for sons? Do you have any sons?
I have a stepson, but he's much older, and I don't use the word step. I have a lot of nephews. I got godchildren. So boys are in part of my life. They are.
So with that, for the 17 and 18-year-old young men that's on here, what would you give them in terms of, jewels for what they need to be focusing on right now?
Absolutely. Let me say this to you all. First and foremost, for my young men, there's a king inside of you. A lot of times you all tend to use that term prematurely because you like to say, young, I'm a king, but you're acting like you're not. And that's not abnormal because you're learning who you are. But what you are is, let's say, bound for royalty. You've been blessed and ordained for something greater than yourself.
Yes, indeed.
There's a different pressure sometimes on young men. It's okay to save yourself too. Everybody don't need to know what you look like from here down. Okay. If you really believe that you are of a high value, then value yourself and recognize that everybody's worthy. In that space. What I want you to do is to allow yourself to be the smartest one in the room. Allow yourself to be honest with yourself. If you're struggling with reading, that's an easy fix. Just read. That's all you gotta do. And there's some wonderful books out there, and they're 17, 18 years old. You ought to be reading The Miseducation of the Negro, the autobiography of Malcolm X. You ought to be reading books by I can go on and on, Langston Hughes, and read poetry and allow your creativeness to come out. It's okay to be gentle. It's
Mm.
okay to be kind. You ought to make a decision within yourself that you're not going to be calling black girls and women, period, but especially young black girls, bitch and hoe. Why would you do that?
Mhm.
What is the game there? It is okay to be the Prince Charming, the young man that everybody's mama said, I want him for my son-in-law. That's who I'd like my daughter to be along with. And you need to carry yourself as your sisters are looking at you, and you're an example of all that is to come after you. Your seed don't need to be spent with everybody. You need to actually put some value on that thing. Because the one thing I hear about from my young men, especially when they get caught up, when they say, well, you know, I got a young man that has a couple of young children, and by different women. And I said, you know, it's kind of hard for me to reconcile how you say this mother of this child is not X, Y, and Z, but you laid with her. You know, let's just be real.
Yes, indeed.
So if she wasn't X, Y, and Z and you laid with her and didn't even think about what happens when you do such, then what does that say about how you feel about yourself? Value yourself. Don't spill it everywhere. That's,
There
you
it
know,
is.
and so that part, I want you to think about going into these fields that I described in, engineering, because you've been doing it all your lives. You're the greatest innovators are brothers from the hood. You know, I grew up where if you didn't have a scooter, if that's what you wanted, or a bicycle, you made it. Take the wheels off of a lawnmower, slap it onto a running board, you know, you made it. You want a tree house, you figured it out. You want a basketball hoop, you know, kick the bottom out of a crate and tack it up. You have been innovators all your life. You have been engineers all your life. That's why I call you doctor. That's why I call you engineer. That's why I don't allow you to say things like, I don't know how. I will accept you saying, I'm going to find out. I will accept you saying, I'm not familiar. I will accept you saying, I have never done it before. But to say, I'm not going to do it because, you know, because I'll get kids say, oh, this is whack. This is stupid. No, it's not. What's whack and what's stupid, and I hate the word stupid, but what's whack and what's stupid is that you would keep yourself from being exposed and gaining experience in something that could only make you wiser, only make you more powerful.
Yes,
so
indeed.
That's it. So my boys, I have to have a conversation with them quietly. I can look, because
I know that's right. All right, so if there's one thing, one message that you can leave us with, if we ain't catch nothing that you said this whole time, if there's one message that you can leave us with, what would it be? Wrap us up.
You see that? Can you all see this right here?
We see it now.
My dreams have always been bigger than my fears. That's my quote. My dreams have always been bigger than my fears. You are going to find yourself in different situations where you will be forced to stretch and forced to, you'll either, you know, persevere, or you will perish. And so your obedience must be greater than your sacrifice when your dreams are bigger than your fears. Do it afraid. You know, so what? You're afraid. Do it afraid. But you got to have a plan. And that really supports the navigation in that journey. But when I say your obedience must be greater than your sacrifice, sacrifice is very clearly, I'm going to give this up because I know I'll get this in exchange. Obedience is, I'm going to stay the course. I don't know what's going to happen. I just believe in my heart. This is, you know, this is for me. And I'm just going to keep going. I don't know when it's going to change, but I'm not going to give up. And that's what's required of you. You know, show me your friends and I'll always be able to show you your future. Remove from your life without announcement. Anybody. I don't care who it is, family, friend, that would in any way impede you from being your best self. If you got crazy, wild dreams and you running with folks that you can't share those crazy, wild dreams with, you with the wrong people. Bottom line. if you are in a scenario where you can say some stuff like, I'm thinking I'm going to build a satellite that just catapults me on Mars, and you got friends that was like, dang, that's dope. Let's see where we can go. You with the right crew.
Yes, indeed.
If you want to be more, then you got to roll with more. People come into your life for two purposes. They're either going to pour into it, make a deposit, or they're going to pull from it, make a withdrawal. And so you've got to decide, am I with people who are making a deposit, giving me positive input, giving me positive reinforcement, encouraging me? Or am I with people who are just draining the hell out of me because they always got a problem? They always complain about not having. They always talking about what somebody owe them. That is draining.
Yes, indeed.
And so I also want our people, our young people especially, to know God kissed you. When he colored you chocolate, he gave you something special. He gave you something special. You don't even understand your power. All you know is for some reason, with all of the things falling apart around you, you're still here. You're still standing. And so your purpose must be greater than anything you're going to do for yourself. And I'm going to leave this with you and we can wrap up. My mother would say to my brother and I, it will only be what you do for others that will ever matter in the end. That is, it will only be when Phil Douglas, 100 years from now, closes his eyes, there will be thousands of you who said, that brother taught me chess. And when he taught me to play chess, he actually taught me how to do math, how to think critically, how to think strategically. He taught me how to protect what's valuable and how to make a decision on what I could afford to let go and what I was not willing to sacrifice. That's chess. It's deeper than just moving pieces on the board. And so that's what I want them to know. That's what I want them to know. Absolutely.
That'll work. All right, everybody, how we gonna wrap up? You know, one thing that we do in our classes when we have a guest speaker is, you know, I count to 3 and then we all just snap at the same time. All right, that's how we gonna wrap it up. All right, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And that's the art of storytelling for the day. Thank you again, Miss Toi. Thank you again. And thank y'all for chiming in and tuning in. Tomorrow again, we on again tomorrow, 3 o'clock. Chime in, get it in. All right, I'm gonna see y'all later. Peace. Peace side.
Baby, you.
Oh, now you want to say something.
Nah, you had us on mute.
Man, you could have took your own phone off of mute, fool. Don't do that.
I
Don't even
text.
do that.
I text.
Oh, man, get out of here. Now you want to say something.
I text. You look.
I